A lot of times people check in on the moms, but they don't check in on the dads. A lot of times moms, in a sense, are more okay with admitting that they are stressed out or overwhelmed. But dads don't really have the space or grace to admit that I'm struggling being a dad. People are like, well, what's so hard about being a dad? Oh, the mom's doing everything. And I would say like the first most important thing for new dads, this is what I experienced, is go.
In June, we are having our Father's Day like showcase. So we thought that it would be a very good opportunity for you to share these insights with not only audiences in Singapore, but we are like all over Asia. So just a quick introduction on what CinemaWorld is. So we are a pan-Asian movie service that showcases international films through our 24-hour linear channel as well as our on-demand services. With CinemaWorld, we really seek to entertain and engage our Asian audiences with emblematic stories that reflect this shared human experience that we have. So this Father's Day, we are really thrilled to have you guys, a Bros Before Woes, a men well-being and a group initiative started by, I think, three bros. So joining us today, I'm very glad we have Kit as well as Titus. Maybe y'all can bring us through how did y'all start this journey?
Nice. So, I mean, Bros Before Woes really kind of started out between the three of us, and we had quite one simple question actually, and that was along the lines of where are all the good dudes or where are all the good bros out there? We started to experience, I think, through the our different channels of work, right? That a lot of the individuals that we were facing and coming across that maybe were going through troubled times or were difficult people to work with tended to
Yeah.
be men. And so we just started asking that question, where are all the good dudes? And we came to the conclusion or realization that, it's pretty hard to find. And that we, three of us, felt lucky enough that we had a handful of good guys that we could always turn to, each other included, but realized or were quite honest in the way that we thought maybe for a lot of the guys out there, they don't have a good dude in close proximity, someone that they can turn to for support, but also guidance and advice, and just to be able to deal with the ups and downs of life with.
I'd like to share the story about how the name came about because it's often the name that people are very interested in, right? So the name Bros Before Woes, well, the original saying is Bros Before Hoes, right? And that's sort of a colloquial way that guys often use to say, well, women don't understand us. And so the bros need to band together, yes. What we're banding together against is not women, but it's actually against this common enemy, which is the struggles that we go through, our inability to process it well, our difficulties in talking about it, maybe even to a certain extent, society's perception about how guys should be. This should be more clearly identified as being the common enemy, right? As being the woes that we face. And if I think if, like Kit said, if guys can get decent guys to hang out with, the cycle and the circle of conversation that happens is going to be a lot more virtuous than vicious. And what we hope to see is really sort of the re-education of men, right? For them to realize, hey, actually, the way I've been reacting, the way I've been responding, this is not the way. There is a better way. There's a more decent way.
Premise of today's conversation, I think we kind of identified 6 movies where there are 6 fathers in it. And of course, Kit, no problem, you can jump in. We have a lot of questions that I think we can gain from your perspective as well. So these 6 fathers, they are actually, I would say, broken to a certain extent, but they have very different contexts. So we have 3 single fathers here, and we also have 2 fathers who are dealing with coming of age. Their children are approaching teenagers, approaching adulthood, and then we have finally a father who realizes that his wife has cheated on him, and the son that he thought was his was actually not his. So maybe let's just start off this entire conversation with this movie called A Son. It's talking about this father, Kirk Faris, where they went on a family holiday, and then they have been ambushed by terrorists, and then his son needs a transplant, and it was then that he realized that his son is not actually his biological son. So a son really touches on big taboos on a cheating wife as well as a son that is not his by blood. So he's trying to navigate what does being a father mean to him and exactly what makes a father.
To me, as long as this father, in his treatment of this son, for the past 10 years, has never treated him any different. The main thing that's different here is there was some deception that went on, right? And that's something to unpack. But in the sense of being a father, I think being a father figure to somebody is to be someone that sees them through a part of their life where they really need a strong male role model to look up to. From the perspective of a 10-year-old boy, he knows no other father in his life. When he thinks of father, the only person that comes up is you, like this person. So in that sense, this child only knows one father, which is you. So you really do fully embody that role as a father.
With Titus, Brian, and myself, you'll realize the dynamic is very much I'm the scholarly one, so I've dived deep into the history of men and all the folklore and all the theory and all that stuff. But for a lot of guys out there, for a lot of boys out there, we're actually raised all in all by a multitude of different guys in our lives, right? One of the common quotes in men's work is that every boy learns from a father, right? Every boy is taught lessons from the father, whether through absence or whether through presence, right? It's so we learn some things from the lack of a father. We learn some things from having a father, and presence isn't always good either, right? So the most important thing is do you have father figures? Do you have male role models in our lives? If we go back to kind of a tribe and the social structure of a lot of the tribes where men have really big initiation ceremonies and they go away as boys and come back as men ready to lead the tribe forward and ready to take care and protect everyone, right? A boy is not raised just by their father, right? But every boy is raised by every man who is in the village. And from that, they gain multiple perspectives on what it means to be a man. They get richness of experience. And I think as a society, that's something that we can move towards, right? If every man out there, every adult male felt some sort of responsibility to raise the next generation of men, to carry something a little bit, carry lessons forward, good lessons forward, then that is what is most important. That's what boys need.
We have two films actually here that's talking about single parenthood. So we have a film from Finland. So basically, he was left with his newborn after his his partner realizes that she doesn't want to do motherhood. Like motherhood's not her thing anymore. It's a comedy, and then we also have another film which he's actually also left with the baby after he found that his baby was actually put up for adoption after he hasn't seen his girlfriend for like 6 months. If he doesn't take care of her, she will be taken by someone else. So that's a drama about of some fathers kind of navigating fatherhood, but now they're doing it alone. So we've heard a lot about strong moms playing both maternal and paternal roles. But what about fathers in this case? Do you have any anecdotes, any stories about single dads trying to raise their children alone, and what kind of resources do they have out there to support families like that?
The first thing that came to mind when I saw resources was in Singapore, at least, there is Dads for Life, and there's also Center for Fathering, which are massively important national movements around helping dads to become better dads and supporting fathers. And I'm sure that they have a lot of resources, especially for single dads. A lot of dads do go through a bit of a struggle in adapting to their role as fathers, and it's a role that is greatly downplayed. A lot of times people check in on the moms, but they don't check in on the dads. A lot of times moms, in a sense, are more okay with admitting that they are stressed out or overwhelmed. The dads don't really have the space or grace to admit that I'm struggling being a dad. People are like, well, what's so hard about being a dad? Oh, the mom's doing everything. So I think society as a whole can do with having a lot more sympathy towards fathers, especially new fathers, which in this case, both of these guys are going to be new dads, right? And I would say like the first most important thing for new dads, this is what I experienced, is go find other new dads. So you don't feel alone in your struggle. You talk to these other new dads and you're like, okay, great, I'm not crazy. It really is a challenge. Like, it really is difficult. I'm not just like weak or pathetic or not coping well.
What are some of the challenges that they face? I mean, for yourself as a relatively new first time dad also.
For sure. Okay, top of the list, I think, is realizing that a lot of the very physical things and outward things are borne by the mom, right? Especially if, as a family, you decide to breastfeed the child, right? And so naturally, the mom has a very clearly defined role. The father, or at least I as a father, was sort of running around like a headless chicken, trying to figure out where I can plug in. My role as a dad is not as clearly defined. I had to find out with my partner what was the roles I needed to plug. Second is you also have to deal with a wife who is going through a lot. I don't say deal with as if it's a problem, but deal with in that you have to be aware that your wife is possibly not the same person. She's changed because she has now born a child and she's now having to embody this new role as a mom. And that's a very big shift for them. So that's the second thing, which is having to help your wife through this new change that she's going through in her life. Third thing is just recognizing that you're now responsible not just for one other person, but two other people. And of those two people, one is really very helpless. There is a loss of a lot of autonomy. There is gaining of a lot of responsibility. And then the last thing I would say is it was a struggle for me to admit that that I am not very good at learning how to balance my time out because I wanted very much to be a present father. I neglected the relationship with my wife, my work, and in hindsight, I could have balanced it a lot better. But I felt very overwhelmed and very, very desperate to be a good and present father, and perhaps lean too much into it.
I might ask Titus a question as well, joining the role of interviewer here. At any point, Titus, when you're expecting, when the baby was kind of on the way, did you feel prepared? And then after you became a father, did that sense of preparedness, persist, or did you realize like I'm not prepared at all? And maybe is there really any way for you to feel prepared?
Yes, I was prepared to an extent. I went for a prenatal class with my wife, and that was very helpful. I encourage anyone who is about to have a kid, please go and educate yourself. All of the things that I raised earlier were things that I did not expect, but I definitely didn't expect the depth and intensity of some of the problems that came up, and the four things I mentioned earlier. Is there any way to be prepared? Not really. I think being a parent is just not something you can go to school for. It's just something you have to get in and learn. I feel like if I could go back, I wish someone would tell me all of these things that I just mentioned, which is just don't throw yourself all the way in. Take care of your wife. Be prepared that you will not know what your role is about. But yeah, and again, coming back to what I said, having that community of dads to be learning with, I think is very helpful.
I kind of want to zoom out a bit as well because we are talking about us being in the Asian context, and the father figure, especially if somebody is really revered, there's a lot of pride. So is this perhaps an approach driven by hyper masculinity? I think Kit, you kind of mentioned it as well, that you kind of I would say experience it in some sense, and yeah, is this something that you witnessed in other families as well?
Yeah, for sure. There's a saying that goes, the son will pay for the sins of the father. It's this idea that in every man and every boy, they carry the imprint of all the men who came before them. And so I recently shared a story of my journey with masculinity and how I came to want to start Bros Before Woes or create something for men. And my relationship with my father definitely informed a lot of that. And it was through a process of confronting a very difficult process with a lot of tears and a lot of yelling that realized that, my father had things with his father that he never spoke about, that he never got closure with, that he never got warmth from. He ended up, being cold, being distant, just like his father before him, and maybe like his father before him. And we don't know how far it goes, right? But I think every man reaches a crossroads in terms of what do you decide you're going to carry forward, and what do you decide that you're going to leave on behind? And I think that's a question that'll come for us all.
I was recently talking to someone whose father is Exactly as this write-up describes. Fractured relationship, but unrepaired due to pride. Speaking as a guy, I think what tends to happen is the work that we feel we put in gets unrecognized. And so when people point out the ways in which we fall short, we become defensive because it feels like we don't acknowledge, or rather not you don't acknowledge, but the things we do aren't acknowledged, but instead the things that we fall short in or that we lack. Our flaws are the only things that get pointed out. And the classic one is I work so hard for the family, I put in so much time, but you don't care about any of that. So I think that's often what does happen. And a lot of it, again, the big driving force is just this communication barrier, right? Not the husband's need to be acknowledged, but also the wife and the child's need to have that connection with their father. Another layer that I would add on is just the fact that men are not good at saying this is my need. I would never hear my dad, and I wouldn't hear dads in that generation say, actually, I just need to feel appreciated. Often what you hear is, you don't even know how hard I work. It's very like that, rather than my need is this. So I think that's another layer that I'll add on is that men are not very good and don't have that practice of talking about what their needs are and how they need their needs to be met.
I'm hearing a lot of internal struggle, a lot of self-reflection, and like recently, children opening up to their parents about their mental health struggles. And I think it's, of course, a very healthy conversation where children can also learn of what their parents are going through mentally, how they are feeling.
Yeah, I think a lot of younger people, younger generations now are able to speak their minds or like express themselves and their worries. But then there's always that problem where parents don't exactly know how to respond. Yeah. Particularly dads. I don't know. That's my experience.
Yeah, I completely agree. We at Bros Before Woes, we talk a lot about masks, and I think one of the masks that parents put on, dads especially, but moms as well, in their own right, the mask of the strong one, the provider, the protector, right? As a leader of the household, right, is my job to be strong and to exhibit strength and to be a rock. When times get difficult, right, you got to be the anchor. Titus talked about something that we've experienced in our Bros Nights, and Bros Nights are the monthly sessions that we run where men just come in and just talk. They just share about their lives with vulnerability and with courage, just about the stuff that's going on, things that they're experiencing. And one of the most profound things that we found is that when one man puts down a mask or one person puts down the mask, it then gives the rest permission to put down the mask as well. And I think a very common experience that we have in Bros Nights is dudes after sharing going like, heck, I thought I was the only one that was dealing with this stuff. Every other day we'll worry about, how's my career doing? How am I set up? Am I going to be able to provide for my family? Am I going to be a good dad? Am I going to be a good husband if things suddenly get hard? And there's so many times that I wonder, like, am I the only one wondering this? Like, if I look to my left and to my right with my friends, they seem to be doing pretty well. They seem to be having a good time. So it's something that, couples need to do as parents, right? And I think there's nothing more inspiring to kids to see parents who give one another the permission to struggle, but also to know that, hey, if you're struggling, you're not alone. You've got your partner, you've got your kids. We're all in this together, and everyone's a support system.
I guess for us to hear a bit more about what goes on within your Bros Night sessions. Could you share with us some of the common sentiments when you mentioned they were talking about worries that they have in career, worries that they have in relationships? Just to put it out there, and for our viewers, when they hear it, there's something that they can resonate with.
We try to every month get people together. So we go in typically groups of 6 to about 8 people tops, and it's just a semi-facilitated group of sharing among men only, right? We call it Bros Nights. We have it at a bar. So it's nice and chill, it's nice and laid back, but we talk real, right? It includes a check-in. So we usually talk a little bit about ourselves, what's going on in our lives. And then we always talk about a table topic. There's always something to do with the condition of man. And it varies from session to session, depending on what we hear in the room, the profile of the men who turn up. So for instance, if it's all, dads, expectant dads or dads with young kids, so our table topic might be skewed around there. Something that's always come up is the conversation around purpose, right? Men feeling that at times they don't have control of their life. They are struggling to take control of their life. They perform and they do what is expected, but there's a little bit missing that makes them feel like they're the captain of their own ship, right? And that they're looking for that actively.
Now that we are coming to the end of our conversation as well, we are both females here. We also want to know, how do you think women, mothers, partners, sisters, daughters can kind of add to this conversation? Now that you're having a conversation that's closed door, a safe environment, right now, how do we integrate this to make sure it's a whole of society kind of conversation?
The common word that is being used is for women to be allies, but I think more importantly for women to be partners. So what I mean by partners is I don't think this is something that men are able to do just with other men, because we talk among a group of guys and we're like, yeah, this is awesome, this is great. Then we go home and then we're with our partners or wives, spouses, and then suddenly it's like, man, what does this suck again? What has helped is in some of our previous sessions, it was both men and women, but it was centered on masculinity. And I think it was helpful just for the women to hear how guys often feel about things, or how guys often think or respond or perceive things. And just to realize, wow, it is really quite different. Yeah, like I said, really the role of women is just to realize that while it may seem that guys are just being very defensive and proud and unrepentant, actually a lot of that is hiding hurt and pain and just feeling stuck with not being able to process emotions well.
I always think that when it comes to masculinity, femininity, right, it's not just the gender themselves that contribute to those scripts and narratives, right? Yes, for the men's side, right, other men are the ones policing this masculinity, right? So don't be such a wuss. These are phrases that really cut deep, right, for other men, and show men that, hey, don't show weakness, just put on a brave face and go. Don't hesitate even. So that's just one example of how it goes. But on the other side, we're also policed by the opposite sex, right? There are things that women do that help perpetuate some of these scripts, right? So something that we see a lot these days, still in the narratives of dating or relationships, a lot of the times it's, guys need to pay for the first date, or if they can't pay for my dinner, they don't make enough money anyway to deserve me. Of course, that's more for some more immature women, but that is still something that exists out there and that young men believe, right? So when things like that happen, it's, what are you showing as women to be important in your men, right? Is it that they are caring, that they're empathetic, that they're showing up, that they're open? Or is it that they're able to provide, that they're able to spend money, and they're able to be rich and powerful one day, right? I think those definitely send messages, right? So I would say that women play a big part in how men see themselves and how men see what kind of dude they need to be, whether they need to chase the money, chase the cars, chase the watches, because that's what they think is going to bring them love and connection. So I think it takes growing from both men and women. When Titus said, I think a lot of men are carrying hurt and fear, I would correct that and say that all men are carrying fear and hurt in the same way that all women are too. It's just that they're slightly different, right? Yes. So to understand that there are a lot of worries that go on behind the mask of men.
thank you for really summing this entire conversation up. And from titles, I'm hearing that from you, curiosity and patience. I think that's something that the opposite gender really has to work on when they are in this conversation. And also because we are doing something that I think it's mainly in Singapore. Do you have something to plug just for our viewers to go and continue seeing what kind of content you put out there, and then how they can be part of a conversation even online?
Well, definitely give us a follow on Instagram. We're Bros Before Woes.sg. Definitely give Kit a follow as well, because he posts a lot of stuff on his personal page on LinkedIn regarding healthy masculinity. And we have a Luma page as well as a website. Our website is brosbeforewoes.com. And the Luma page is linked there, and you can see all of our upcoming events there. And then the other very exciting news is we're going to start a series of intensive 8-week kind of workshops to help basically men to supercharge or fast track their education.
So we will have it. I think it's online at the moment, right? So that there's accessibility. We've already had some interest from people overseas who aren't in Singapore that are keen on the program. So we thought for that reason we might keep it online. But what it is, it's an 8-week program, weekly, really intensive with some homework, really as a way for men to kind of put their foot down. We remember we said take it or leave it. So pretty much take it or leave it, right? For men to take that plunge to say like, hey, I need to work on stuff, and I want to work on stuff, and I want to be the best man that I can be.
Yeah, I definitely will put the resources below. Yeah, so thank you for joining us. I mean, if you're interested in any of these 6 films that we mentioned earlier, all 6 of them are available on CinemaWorld, and CinemaWorld is actually on Rewatch. So if you have it, go ahead and give it a watch. And yeah, let us know what you think about these films as well.